The Meadowcroft boarding kennels just outside Stourbridge are owned by Green General Manager Stephen Ray and his wife Ellie. They opened the kennels over 2 years ago when they moved to the area and have since established close links with Hall Green's retired Greyhound Trust, taking in ex-racers from the Birmingham track before the process of rehoming begins.
We bought this place 2.5 years ago. Intention was to put a boarding kennels here for my wife to run as a business, and we set it up. It was a dilapidated, rundown riding school, 16-acre farm. Spent a couple of £100,000 completely renovating it, putting the boarding kennels in, and at the same time the retired greyhounds from Hall Green were kept with Don Bennett just round the corner, and Don was getting ready for retirement, and the RGT were looking for somewhere to put the Hall Green retired greyhounds, so we converted all the old kennels and sheds out the back, and I think you've seen the pictures of them today. They're happily housed there.
So how's the homing going as far as the numbers are concerned?
Well, the numbers are great at the moment, but again, I don't want to take any credit for that side of it. I mean, Simon Gray, who's the chairman of the Hall Green Trust, has been chairman about 4 or 5 years, done a fantastic job. He's got a wonderful team of volunteers, people like Pat Chan, Rose Morgan, you know, there's a whole host of them, and they're really fantastic people, do a lot of hard work. They're here every weekend, and they've done tremendously. Last year they homed a record over 200, and this year it's taken off again. I mean, they're going out at the moment at the rate about 4 or 5 a week, so it's fantastic.
Well, let's talk about those numbers. I mean, would you say that your retired homing section here is taking care of all of the Hall Green dogs?
I would think so at the moment. I mean, obviously we went through a quiet period just before Christmas, and there's a bit of a backlog that's backed up of dogs waiting to come in here from the trainers. But I say we took in 5 on Wednesday. I think there's another 5 or 6 coming in next week. So they're coming in, and as fast as they're coming in, they're going out. So they're doing a fantastic job, the Hall Green Retired Trust volunteers.
Stephen's profile in the sport is now very much a managerial one, but his involvement stretches further back. He was and still is an owner, but also raced dogs himself.
I had a few dogs around the flaps when I was about 18 or 19. My dad used to take me ground racing when I was a kid at King's Heath and Willenhall, and then when they closed we moved on to the old Perry Bar, and he got me my first dog off a trainer at Hall Green called John Malcolm. An old dog called Cuddle Supreme, and we had some fun with him on the flaps, and I got sort of hooked really. Took out a permit and started racing my dogs under rules at Norton Keynes.
And then you know, being an owner and being a trainer wasn't enough for you?
No, I had a business at the time. I was an insurance broker, and Charlie Southall, who bless him, built Norton Keynes, lovely guy, and his family, he sadly died, and his family decided to sell the track. And a friend of mine, Arthur Kane, bought the track, and I took over the lease on the stadium running the greyhound racing side. So I was a promoter as well for a few years.
Now, what happened after Norton Keynes left?
Well, I mean, I was in business. I had various businesses. I mean, I was a bookmaker. I had a couple of betting shops and insurance brokers. Got involved in a telecoms company when the deregulation of telecoms came along. So I had a bit of pie in everything. And unfortunately, my marriage broke up. Through no fault of our own. We were kids when we got married, and grew apart really. So my marriage broke up, and I sold all my businesses and decided to have a bit of a break. Had a couple of years training point-to-pointers and training a few dogs and just having a bit of fun really, and then realised I couldn't spend the rest of my life having fun. I'd have to go back to work. So I went to work for Gordon Bissett at Ladbrokes and general manager at Crayford in 1990, and I've been in the sport again ever since.
A few years later, Stephen was headhunted by Robert Parker to become general manager at Hackney. History tells us it was a project doomed to failure, with assurances given to Stephen proving unattainable. The highs of opening up a new super stadium were soon replaced by the lows of seeing the bulldozers move in.
It is sad. I mean, I miss Hackney. When I first went there, and it was still the old stadium with the Saturday morning bags, and we were still running Saturday morning bags right up until more or less I left. And one of the reasons I left, as it was chronicled at the time, was that the new people at the time who were running it, who had replaced Robert Parker by this time, wanted to drop Saturday morning bags to put Speedway World Championships on and what have you. And of course, bags weren't happy about that, and I wasn't happy about that, and advised against it, but they went ahead against my wishes, which was the catalyst for me leaving, and a few weeks later bags pulled the plug on them, and ultimately by pulling the plug, they pulled the plug on their only major source of income at that time.
So what happened after Hackney?
I had about 6 months off. I walked away. I mean, they had to pay up my contract. I mean, we partied less than amicably, but at the end of the day I had a contract, so they paid. So financially I was okay. I walked away. I had 6 months rest and relaxation. I had a couple of offers to go and work running horse race tracks, and was considering one of those offers when Clark Osborne out the blue gave me a call and said that Dan McCormack was retiring at Milton Keynes, and would I come on board as general manager at Milton Keynes with a view to moving on to operations controller or what have you as the business expanded. So I took Milton Keynes on, and I have to say that 3-year period at Milton Keynes was the happiest time of my life in greyhound racing. I had a wonderful time. Some great people at Milton Keynes, real salt of the earth people, you know, people like Derek Law, you know, smashing guy, Mick Large, who's still around today doing all the track refurbishments and what have you. And then bookmakers like Del Burrows, a real character, and of course Gary Wiltshire, who's a good pal of mine today. So, you know, made some real good friends for life there.
Well, Crayford aside, you've had a good record of being at tracks that have closed since. Is that going to continue?
I've been at Hall Green for 10 years, and for the last 5 years, as you famously filmed on Sky last week, I've been denying that Hall Green has been closing, and I think I've been proven right now finally. After 5 years, I think people have dropped that rumour. I don't see, I think Milton Keynes was always going to close. I think that BS Group had an agenda there, and good luck to them. I think that Hackney was doomed from the start. But I mean, you know, don't forget I was GM at Swindon, and I did build Poole with BS Group. That was one of my major tasks when I was there, and that's still running today. I was general manager at Crayford, and that's still running today. So I'm not quite a Gary Woodward. I haven't closed as many tracks as he has.
As an owner, Ray rates Coombe John as the fastest dog he's had, although by far the most successful was Clombrin Black, a bitch will always have a special place in Stephen and Ellie's heart.
She still holds a track record at Crayford to this day. I bought her off Ginger McGee as a wedding present for my new wife, Ellie, and only paid about £1,000 for her. And she won 29 Opens, I think, and all around the country. Fortunately, she was around at the same time as that prolific staying bitch, Poor Sue. I think that won over 50 Opens, and we either won or were second to Poor Sue everywhere we went.
So Stephen, greyhounds is your business and one of your main loves, but your other main love in your life are horses.
Yeah, well, of course, my wife's one of my loves in my life. I've got to slip that in. But yeah, my horses. I played football at a decent standard when I was young, but when I was about 24, I did my cruciate knee ligament, and in those days that finished you. So I started riding horses and got into point-to-pointing, trained a few point-to-pointers, rode in a point-to-point, and really enjoyed myself. And I've just recently come back into it now. I've got more time.
And you've got a couple of horses in training now?
Yeah, Tight Corner, who I had a sharing with Ian Williams, and another horse we've just bought called Be Realistic, who's related to Go Ballistic, who was well known. So we're hopeful this year we'll have a good time and win a couple of races.
Have you ever had any winners under rules?
Not under rules, no. I trained a horse called Silversmith years ago that won at the old Aintree point-to-point course, and he was an Arab, and we used to do Arab racing in those days and had a bit of fun, and we backed him from 33 to 1 down to 6 to 1, and he won by about 15 lengths, so you know, they were good fun. But hopefully this year, as I say, both the horses are fitting well, and you know, I'm sure that they're capable of winning races.
Unfortunately, Tight Corner, the lead horse here, has had a setback and is out for the season. The hopes are high that Be Realistic can continue to progress.